Oh, there you are. I found something I want to show you. I see Snail on the left side of the tree. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you where Snail hides from Season 5 of Blue's Clues. There are 36 episodes in Season 5. So let's start off. The first episode is, Can You Help? First, you can see Snail on the left side of the lamp on the purple round table in the living room when Joe was looking for Blue in the bedroom. Next, you can see Snail on the left side of the leg of the snack table in the living room when Joe was going to the kitchen to find the first clue, which was a wolf. And finally, you can see Snail next to a tree on the left side when Joe and Blue were playing Little Red Riding Hood. The second episode is Colors Everywhere. First, you can see Snail next to a purple tulip when Joe, Blue, Shovel, and Pail do finger painting in the backyard. Next, you can see Snail next to the thinking chair when Joe and Blue sang the mealtime song. And finally, you can see Snail next to the right side of the leg of the table after Joe finished drawing the third clue, which was a puppy. The third episode is the snack chart. First, you can see Snail next to a post of a brown sign that leads back to the living room in the felt frame when Joe and Blue skidooed into the felt frame into a farm. And finally, you can see Snail next to the Blue's height chart when Joe skidoos back from the farm when he heads over to the thinking chair. The fourth episode is The Big Book About Us. First, you can see Snail on the right side of the lamp on the purple table in the bedroom when Joe was going to Blue to make their big book about us. Next, you can see Snail as a sticker on the garden sticker when Joe was helping find Periwinkle's stickers for his book. And finally, you can see Snail next to the sticker book when Joe skidooed back home, heading to the thinking chair. The fifth episode is Plain Store. First, you can see Snail behind the right side hat rack in front of the party hat when Joe goes to the hat store. Next, you can see Snail on the boat on the right side of the bathtub when Joe goes to the boat store. Next, you can see Snail on the second top shelf when Joe and Blue skidooed into the furniture store. And finally, you can see Snail on the right side of the lamp on the purple table in the bedroom when Joe and Blue go to the number store. The sixth episode is Patient. First, you can see Snail behind the right side of the grass next to a bush in the backyard when Joe and Blue went over to see the egg. Next, you can see Snail behind the right side of the toy chest when Joe was looking for the first clue, which was wood. And finally, you can see Snail on the orange card near the green card that leads back to the backyard in the waiting game when Joe skidooed from the waiting game back to the backyard. The seventh episode is 100th episode celebration. First, you can see Snail dressed as a purple sparkle on a wooden wheel when they were singing the 100 Days song. The eighth episode is Joe's surprise party. First, you can see Snail next to the block tower when Tickety was looking for the first clue, which was a tape. Next, you can see Snail next to the grass and tulip when Joe and Blue sang the mealtime song. And finally, you can see Snail wearing a party hat on top of side table drawer and next to Tickety Talk when Joe blows out his candle. The ninth episode is I'm So Happy. First, you can see Snail next to a lit yellow daisy in the backyard when Joe was heading outside to meet up with Periwinkle. Next, you can see Snail next to a red beach chair when Joe was dancing to the music when he finds the second clue, which was a door. And finally, you can see Snail next to the grass when Joe and Blue skidooed back home from Felix's neighborhood. The 10th episode is The Boat Float. First, you can see Snail in a paper boat in front of the vase between the kitchen and living room when Joe heads to the kitchen to find the first clue, which was the color red. Next, you can see Snail behind the right side of the second pillar when Joe and Blue help the boats. And finally, you can see Snail behind the siren, which was the third clue after Joe finished drawing the clue. The 11th episode is Bedtime Business. First, you can see Snail dressed in pajamas next to the turn-on lamp when Joe and Blue were putting Boris to bed. Next, you can see Snail next to a stacked towels on the bedroom table when Joe was going to the bedroom to get Tickety Talk, Shovel, and Pail ready in their pajamas. And finally, you can see Snail sleeping next to the lamp on the purple table between the living room and bedroom when Joe sings the So Long song. The 12th episode is Shape Searchers. First, you can see Snail under the snack table behind the left side of the leg when Joe was looking for a square and found it, which was a picture frame. Next, you can see Snail behind the right side of the post of the purple sign that leads back to the living room in the felt frame when Joe skidooed into the felt frame. And finally, you can see Snail behind the right side of the bush on the left side of the library when Joe and Blue were heading to the grocery store. The 13th episode is Blue Goes to the Doctor. First, you can see Snail next to the doctor's bag on the purple table in the bedroom when Joe was finding the first clue, which was a white coat. Next, you can see Snail between a red piano and a yellow ball in the doctor's waiting area when Joe and Blue were waiting for Blue's checkup. And finally, you can see Snail on the left side of Mailbox's pole when Joe was heading inside the house to the thinking chair. The 14th episode is Contraptions. First, you can see Snail on the table between the living room and the kitchen using a pulley contraptions to point a picture on an easel when Joe was looking for the first clue, which was a cup. Next, you can see Snail behind the left side of the bag of dirt when Joe went over to Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper to see their contraption. And finally, you can see Snail behind the left side of the bowl that was part of the mixing contraption in the Contraptions computer game when Joe skidooed back home to the living room. The 15th episode is a brand new game. First, you can see Snail inside the plant basket when Joe goes over to Periwinkle. Next, you can see Snail next to the thinking chair when Joe and Blue sang the Mealtime song. And finally, you can see Snail next to a white fence with a bunch of flowers when Steve, Blue, Franny, and Periwinkle go to the playground to play the game Blue made up. The 16th episode is a surprise guest. First, you can see Snail on the right side leg of the purple table in the living room when Joe and Blue help clean up the living room. Next, you can see Snail next to the lamp on the purple table between the living room and bedroom when Joe goes to the living room to find things to put away. And finally, you can see Snail on the table with pieces of puzzles in Blue's school when Joe sings the clean up song and heads over to Green Puppy. The 17th episode is Dress Up Day. First, you can see Snail as a white flower on the table next to a red face with a sunflower wearing glasses between the kitchen and living room when Joe pretends to be a robot, heading to the kitchen to find the first clue, which was the color green. Next, you can see Snail next to the green bush with white flowers when Joe heads over to Slippery Soap and Periwinkle, who were playing School Crossing. And finally, you can see Snail on the second row bookshelf when Joe and Blue skidooed into Autry's stage. The 18th episode is Blue's Big Band. First, you can see Snail next to the metronome when Joe was clapping the beats to Blue's Clue song, heading to the kitchen and meets up with Mr. Salt, Mrs. Pepper, and Paprika, who were playing a washboard instrument. Next, you can see Snail next to the green bush in front of the white fence when Joe was outside meeting up with Periwinkle. And finally, you can see Snail on top of a purple board that leads back to the bedroom when Blue and Joe skidooed back home. The 19th episode is Up, Down, All Around. First, you can see Snail in front of the white flower when Joe went to search for Baby Bird in the backyard. Next, you can see Snail on the yellow seat of the tractor when Joe and Blue skidooed into Little Bo Peep's farm. And finally, you can see Snail hiding in the grass when Joe and Blue go to the backyard to find the fish. The 20th episode is Story Wall. First, you can see Snail on the left side of the aluminum can with the paintbrushes on the table when Joe explains about the story wall. Next, you can see Snail on the table on the left side of the stuffed toy broccoli when Joe was looking for the first clue, which was moving. And finally, you can see Snail on the right side of the telephone on side table drawer when Joe sang the So Long song. The 21st episode is The Alphabet Train. First, you can see Snail on the right side of the magnet board when Joe explains about their alphabet train. And finally, you can see Snail in the S box of the alphabet train with Slippery Soap when Joe sings the I'll Never Forget My Alphabet song. The 22nd episode is Numbers Everywhere. First, you can see Snail on the left side of the day calendar with the number 12 on it when Joe was looking for the first clue, which was the number 0. Next, you can see Snail behind the right side of the thinking chair when Joe and Blue sang the Mealtime song. And finally, you can see Snail on the left side of the jelly bean tree when Joe and Tickety walk through the book until Joe finds the third clue, which was another 0. The 23rd episode is Blue's Predictions. First, you can see Snail next to a yellow flower when Joe and Blue go to the backyard to find things to predict. Next, you can see Snail on the kitchen window on the left side of the curtain when Joe headed outside to find the first clue, which was the stage. And finally, you can see Snail on the right side of a yellow daisy when Joe and Blue go to the backyard to watch Periwinkle's magic show. The 24th episode is Our Neighborhood Festival. First, you can see Snail next to the Neighborhood Festival sign when Joe, Blue, and Periwinkle are bringing the papaya to the neighborhood festival. Next, you can see Snail next to Periwinkle's mailbox when Joe is saying the Mealtime song. Next, you can see Snail in Periwinkle's Guess Who game when the contestants are playing Periwinkle's Guess Who game. And finally, you can see Snail next to the left side of the bench when Joe and Blue are going to see the fireworks. The 25th episode is Blues Takes You to School. First, you can see Snail on top of the textbooks on the table between the living room and kitchen when Joe and Periwinkle were heading to the kitchen and getting Blue and Periwinkle for school. Next, you can see Snail next to the white fence with a bunch of flowers when Joe, Blue, and Periwinkle were heading to school. And finally, you can see Snail on the front school window when everyone goes back inside. The 26th episode is Meet Polka Dots. First, you can see Snail on the left side of the telephone on top of side table drawer when Joe introduces himself and plays with his duck Boris. Next, you can see Snail to the right of the fort leg when Blue and Periwinkle were heading inside the fort. And finally, you can see Snail on the right side of the planet after Joe drew the third clue, which was a planet. The 27th episode is The Scavenger Hunt. First, you can see Snail on the right side of a blue bunny when Joe was heading over to Blue and Magenta, who set up a scavenger hunt list. Next, you can see Snail on the table next to a red vase with white daisies between the kitchen and the living room when Joe was going on a scavenger hunt to the kitchen, meeting up with Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper looking for eggs. And finally, you can see Snail on the left side of the tree when Joe was heading out to the backyard for the party when Joe finished the scavenger hunt. The 28th episode is Let's Write. First, you can see Snail with the word snail spelled in front of the living room when Joe was writing the word hat. Next, you can see Snail moving from the living room when Joe goes to the bedroom to find the first clue, which was the letter J. And finally, you can see Snail on the left side of the box stuffed with toys when Joe heads up the stairs to meet up with Marky the Marker. The 29th episode is Magenta's Message. First, you can see Snail on a table on the right side of a purple teapot when Joe is inside Magenta's house and finds the first clue, which was Magenta. Next, you can see Snail on a table next to a tree plant when Joe was looking for the second clue, which was the arrow that Baby Bird was holding. And finally, you can see Snail on the purple table on the left side of the lamp between the living room and bedroom when Joe goes over to the bedroom and the window to see if Magenta's home. The 30th episode is Body Language. First, you can see Snail in the basket on the plant in the living room when Joe goes to the bedroom to find the first clue, which was Grunch eyebrows. Next, you can see Snail next to the puppet theater box when Joe and Blue skidooed into the shadow theater. And finally, you can see Snail on the right side of the cardboard house when Joe skidoos back home. The 31st episode is Blue's car trip. First, you can see Snail on the left side of a basketball when Joe was showing that he was going on a car trip with Blue. The 32nd episode is Look Carefully. First, you can see Snail on a stage back rope when Joe skidooed into a game. And finally, you can see Snail on the left side of a small green bush when Joe and Blue were heading out to the backyard to find a ladybug. The 33rd episode is I Did That. First, you can see Snail to the right of the toy chest when Joe goes over to Frankie, who was trying to tie his shoes. Next, you can see Snail on the left side of the lamp when Joe was going to the bedroom when he trips over the zebra toy. And finally, you can see Snail next to a blue block when Joe skidoos back home from Blue's school. The 34th episode is Animals in Our Town. First, you can see Snail on the left side of the curtain window when Joe goes over to the kitchen to find Mr. Salt. And finally, you can see Snail on top of the bookshelf on the left side of a stack of books when Joe and Blue go over to find out who was the last animal to go home. The 35th episode is Morning Music. First, you can see Snail in pajamas sleeping on a green bed on the left side of the lamp in the living room when Joe goes to the bedroom to wake up Blue. Next, you can see Snail on the left side of the blue coat hanger when Joe looks for the first clue, which was a picture of a sidewalk. And finally, you can see Snail to the left of a white flower green bush when Joe and Blue were riding their bikes to Magenta's house. And the 36th and the final episode of Season 5 is Blue's First Holiday. First, you can see Snail on top of the fireplace between the plant and the picture of Steve's grandma when everyone was about to open Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper's present. Next, you can see Snail next to a pillow with young Steve was reading the book. And finally, you can see Snail on top of the TV to the left of the VCR when they finished watching Blue's first clue. So those are all the episodes of Where Snail Hides from Season 5 of Blue's Clues. So I hope you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.